Hey, good morning, tree lovers. This is Moringa oleifera, growing for me in Las Vegas. Here's on 9A, and the moringa has been a beast for me so far. And this is a 1.5-year-old tree from seed. Moringa is a tropical, so it's suspect to the cold. And this one did very well for me in one of our coldest winters that we've had. I got to 22 degrees right here in the front yard. And since this tree was established somewhat and has a pretty good sized base on it, it fared very well in that temperature. Of course, I had cut it back and had only left the trunk portion of it. Any of these end sections, the tips, the leaves are all going to die off when we get a freeze of any kind. However, if the roots are established, it seems like, and it's pretty obvious with some of the other folks that are growing moringa here in Las Vegas, that it will come back from the roots. But I'm of the opinion right now that if it has a good base to it, that it can survive our winters and come back from the stalk of the tree. And this one was pretty well proof that it has done it. Last year, before our first frost, I cut all the leaves and the limbs back. I cut it back to about 5 foot tall. And by the way, this one right here is 14, 15 foot. And that is about the height that it got last year, which was its first full summer here in Las Vegas. I have some pictures of it that April the 1st of last year, this thing was 10 inches tall. And once the heat hit, it just took off. So this was about its overall height at the end of the year last year. I cut it back. All of this is new growth, again, since about April. So I'm interested to see what it's going to do by the time summer ends here this year. But you can see I cut this back to about 5 foot tall. And this small diameter branch here died back about a foot or so, but then it sprouted up just below it. Now, the first cold spell that we had, when I cut this back, there was 2 stalks on it from the base, one here and one over here. And it was small enough that I was able to just throw a sleeping bag over it and protected it for the first frost. But I'm of the opinion that if it's going to live in my front yard or anywhere in my yard, it's going to have to live without a lot of extra work. So when the cold spell come along where we got a heavy snow for Las Vegas in February, I left it unprotected, and this was kind of the damage to it. So if you have a smaller tree, obviously it's going to die back. But I'm pretty well seeing of the opinion that once it has a larger base on it, that it can take even our most brutal winters, which ours, like I said, was down to about 22 degrees. One thing that I found out, though, in just an interesting observation, you can see I've got a lot of leaf drop down here. And since this is a tropical evergreen, that surprised me. But it appears that moringa really wants to be harvested. In fact, it's just appears like the best thing for it to do. And it appears like that once the tree puts on a second stem or a second leaf, let's see, here we have a nice leafing stem coming out from a main branch, and here we have another stem coming out just above it. And what it appears like from all of these lost leaves, yellow leaves down here, is that once this appears, this stem needs to be harvested. And if that's pretty well the case, you're going to harvest from this thing continuously in a tropical region, but for us up until first frost. And right here is probably a good example of what's happening. I thought perhaps it wasn't getting enough water, but this is one of the most drought tolerant trees that is known to us. And then what I started noticing is, right here's the best example. As this one starts to show some yellow leaves and starts to shed some, it's because the sun's getting in my way. It started a brand new leaf stem right here. So once this leaf stem forms, it's obvious to me that moringa wants to be harvested, and that breaks off very easily, and then that can be air dried or eaten fresh. And I see this continuously all over the tree. So from here on, like this limb here, as soon as this one forms, I'm going to harvest that. And they break off very easily. You don't even need pruning shears for it. You'll see some cases where a flower forms first, and then you will form some of the drumsticks, they call them. This is called a drumstick tree, and also called a horseradish tree. If you taste the leaves, especially this time of the year, you know why it's called a horseradish tree. It's a little bit spicy. But I'm well pleased with it so far, and I'm learning about it. And you can see this limb here has already defoliated all the way, and there's another one sprouting up right there. Here's another one, a new limb is forming. This one is starting to turn yellow already, so I'm going to harvest that. Now last year, I didn't harvest anything on this till I cut it back just before the first frost. But just from my early observations, moringa wants to be harvested, and it should be a continuous harvest all throughout the year. You can see this this particular limb is turning yellow and falling off. Take that and harvest it. Here's another one that a flower pod formed. Here's a bean pod has formed on it. I'm going to take that one off. And it looks like you can do this pretty well all year long. Here's another one where the flower pod formed. Got lots of drumsticks forming here. Another leaf is forming here. This one is going to start dying off real quick. Harvest that. Continuous harvest on moringa appears to be the order of the day. So trying to help you as I learn a little bit also. Moringa, one of the few tropical trees that I think we can grow here in Vegas without a lot of problems. Worst comes to worst, if this thing dies all the way back, I know that the roots are established well enough that this will come back from the roots down here. I'm pretty confident of that, and we've seen that at several places across the valley that they did lose the entire tree when it was a small diameter. However, once you get that bigger diameter on it, it's pretty obvious. Like I said, 22 degrees here, and this is how she come back. Moringa oleifera. Thanks. I hope that was a little help to you.